Tommy, you crack me up. Welcome back to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. We are back again, and the videos are out of order, so I'll reorder them here. So that, okay, now we're good. Now the world is whole.
Unless you were 4 episodes ago, which that was perfectly normal.
That was perfectly normal, up until 4 episodes ago. So, just want to do a quick announcements. So for this podcast is pre-recorded. Sorry, no CODs, batteries not included. I don't know what else you can put on there, but I need to come up with a little bit longer moniker with whatever when we record episodes. So we got people traveling next this week because that's when this is airing. So people are traveling during this time. We will try to participate via chat, but more than likely Seth and I will be sleeping, and Tommy will be doing something else probably. So we'll take.
So we're glad you're awake.
We're glad you're awake.
Happy Tuesday.
There it is.
Look at this. Never fails.
Awesome. So another quick announcement here real quick. We are helping out and promoting the good work done by the SQL Bits people, the SQL Bits team. They are having an amazing event over in the UK. It's on March 14th through the 18th, and there'll be a free Saturday, so you can attend for Saturday for free. There'll be a 5% discount code with our promotional code Power BI Tips 5. So if you want 5% off your ticket to go to SQL Bits this year, go ahead and use that code. Tell them Tommy sent you.
Go get them.
Awesome. Today's topic today, we're going to talk about something from a topic we talked about earlier. We talked about a book called The Mythical Man Month. And for those who have not read the book or kind of get introduced to this, the idea is man hours is a man month of work, and figuratively speaking, man month or person month of work. The amount of hours you work throughout the month. If you're on a software project and you have a tight deadline, throwing more people at the project doesn't necessarily make it go twice as fast. So that's kind of the idea here. Is it's talking about the more people you throw at a process, it doesn't necessarily speed it up linearly per person, because every time you add more people to a process, it requires more communication. So that's kind of the premise of the book. And with that, we're going to talk about a topic or a key topic that came up in the book, which is called a plan to throw one away. That's our topic for today. So building something that you intentionally decide to trash. I think that's what that means. We'll go with it.
Sure.
All right, guys. Tear it apart. Tommy, what do you think? Is this something that you see happening?
Well, the first thing that's incredible is two things about that we're talking about it today. Is one, this book came out in 1975, and we're talking about how relevant, and it is very relevant.
Even today for software development. Yeah, totally.
And even two is software development, and we can see the correlation or the links to this in what we do from a Power BI point of view.
Let's talk about software in 1975 for a second. Were they even doing, Seth, you were around back then. What was even happening back in software?
Yeah.
I was around back then. Thanks, Mike.
No.
I know you're not that much.
Unfortunately, I was a twinkle in somebody's eye.
But no, the only instance if you were doing software in 1975, you say,
wasn't it like
basically you'd be checking out at IBM, and that was it.
Well, wouldn't it be software in 1975 would have been like punch cards?
Yeah.
Aren't you like putting punch cards into a computer, trying to program it with punch cards to get it to do stuff?
Mac didn't exist, or was a twinkle in the eye too.
Yeah.
DOS was not even a thing yet. It was IBM. You worked at IBM.
I'm astounded by just the idea of like, we're gonna have to Google this later. Greg Baldini, please correct the chat about all of my wrong facts. I know you're listening, Greg. Please correct me and get some good detailed facts around when computers were made, when the punch card was being used, and a book, The Mythical Man Month. What was happening in the computer ecosystem at this time?
But yeah, fun thing.
This guy's great. He's genius because we're still doing software development. The computers are so much more powerful, and yet we're still talking about these kind of concepts.
One thing about debugging, the reason why was in the 30s, the computers were the punch cards, but they were size of buses, so they had to be outside. So every so often they would have to clean the computers,
the bugs out of them. What?
So there's debugging.
There was a literal bug in the computer
because it had to be housed outside. It was too big.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Fact.
Wild. The amount of power. If you had shown up, 1975 with an iPhone, and be like, look at this. One, you wouldn't have had Wi-Fi, but beside that,
I wouldn't be doing this podcast right now. It'd be fun.
smoke. They would have been their minds would have been floored about what like they had. Yeah, that would have been crazy, amazing. Well, so the plan to throw one away. Give us some details around what the topic here is, Tommy. What does that mean?
So the idea that Fred Brooks is saying, he's the author of the Mythical Man Month, is no matter what software you're writing, the likelihood it's going to not be perfect. It's going to have some bugs in it. It's going to lack some
Literal
features.
bugs.
It's literal
Has some-
bugs,
It's gonna have
or
some grasshoppers in it.
grasshoppers,
Maybe
exactly.
a centipede or two, a scorpion
It's going to run
potentially.
slowly. It's not going to be the ideal design. The likelihood is incredibly high. So you can either fix it by going back in the same model, or and we'll talk again. We'll obviously put the Power BI a little spin on this.
Yeah.
But the likelihood that what are you going to do? Go back into that model and try to fix column by column, or data piece by data piece, or literally just throw it away and just keep the good parts. And I think that's really the crux of the conversation today is how often do we do it? Is this for really every project? And is this really a best practice?
I liked it. You know what? This is also as you're saying that, as you're writing and saying the description, something popped into my head that I wasn't thinking about earlier, which was this also makes a lot of sense for like consultants or people who are coming in and look at other people's models, right? Other people's models, it's like their first pass at getting the data together, and like maybe there's too many dimension tables, and oh shoot, I'm halfway into the model, I don't want to rebuild it, I'll just bolt on a little bit more. So you have this 6 month to 1 year matured data model, which just kind of keeps getting little arms and little extra, tables here and there that meet a certain need for a certain visual. And then as a consultant, you come in and you're like, whoa, what happened to this model? Why is there so many things across it? Let's really sit down and clean up what's going on here. And then you go back to the visual page and say, okay, what visuals are we finding that are important? And then paring down the data set so you don't need to have all the data. You just bring in just the essential data. So it kind of makes a good like story for how you build stuff, version 1, version 2.
There's an easy part here and a hard part. So the easy one, to your point, from the consultant coming in.
Yeah.
So it's really easy when you're dealing with like the templates, like, like a lot of companies, they deliver their own template that you can like pretty much ready bake and use.
Yes.
Those are easy to throw away or take the good parts from that.
Sure.
But right off the bat, when you're saying that, when you look at a client's model, the harder part with what we do is not just replicating the features. How many times have you thrown one away, but then for whatever reason, the numbers just don't add up exactly to what they did before? And
because
that's
the numbers
our
weren't right
problem.
before. They weren't use sum X, the DAX wasn't right.
It's a little more complicated than that. So, and I think right off the bat, which is kind of, we're already diving deep into this, right off the bat, something that we have to be super aware of is whatever we're going to be taking, breaking apart and going back again, is replicating the numbers too, or verifying if the numbers are right. So
I think you're touching on a part of here that many of our listeners are probably hearing right now. And I think when we were talking on the session with Marco Russo and Alberto Ferrari, there was this word thrown around called data ops. And I think you're speaking to data ops, right? Doing the operational side of, as you make reports, as you build them, double checking your data to make sure that the numbers come out to what you expect them to be. And if you make massive changes to the model, I mean, this is a problem. And anytime you make a version of a model, if you have a section of data in that model that is 2.5 million sales for the month of November, whatever that may be, if you make changes to that model and that same measure that you didn't touch changes somehow, you kind of need to know why the data is changing. That's where data ops comes into this. You got to make sure the numbers match out.
Well, I think probably the best question to start off then is, what are the core components for what we do for starting off with a project? Like, what should we be aware of when it comes to that first iteration? And then how do we basically extract the best parts and remove the worst parts? And maybe that's a good place to start.
Yeah, let's start there. So I'm going to kick it over to Seth. This is where
I was going to see how far I could go without saying anything.
Well, he's just
that's not like you.
Darn, he just got called out.
I know.
So what is the question specifically?
One question at a time, Tommy. Put it on that
I
punch
want to
card,
go
please.
back to the previous episode.
Put it on a punch
but-
card and
Cover
hand
no-
it to Seth,
like
please.
our
Just-
last episode, which may or may not have been today. Like,
if we were listening. So if I remember hearing that today.
we're traveling across a lot of things. So like
Yeah.
initially, like what projects where would we think that you adopt this throw one away kind of strategy?
Yeah.
I think there's like anytime you're building a new data model, like you're showing someone like your first work, you're not going to throw the whole thing away. But I think on those, like you don't spend a ton of time on that very first design report. I think you stub out some stuff, grab some tables, throw some relationships together, kind of stub it together. And then you go back to your user base and be like, that don't spend a ton of time on their first item, because if you do a ton of engineering on the fact table and you're not sure if it's going to be right or not. I do feel like, I'm kind of walking back my statement here a little bit. I think when you know the data domain really, really well, I think you can come in with a better solid first design of a report if you know the data domain. If the data domain is a little less known, then maybe you come in with a little bit more of here's what I think is the best scenario here. Let's start there. And then maybe you throw part of that away.
So I'm on the fence on the whole. Like, am I on the throw everything away, like for every project? And I'm probably not, right? But in a use case that I would be, or where I've seen that, like it never is the first version, is exactly that. It's where I don't understand the systems, nor can somebody really explain them well. So there's a lot of fact finding that has to happen
in that first vision.
Inherently, a lot of trial and error, right? Especially if it's with difficult end users as well, who really don't know the capabilities of Power BI. They've never looked past anything other than green bar, right? It's always or paginated, right? Like an Excel dump, right? And then they go do their own thing. So it's all tables for them, right? In those scenarios, like we talk about iteration, but like one of these is probably going to be a throwaway. Like you're just like your first model is a best hack at here's what I think, compiling, all this data I'm unfamiliar with. I think I might have the business logic right or wrong. Nobody can tell me. I'm working with end users. This is what I'm producing for them. Like I can almost guarantee scenarios like that are going to need major refactor, or in this case, a throwaway, right? But those are few and far between. Like it's not like I know that they've been encountered because I've encountered them, but like I think the minute you throw somebody in that can explain things, that can give you guidance, that can give you the business lot, like that gives you confidence in a model that is going to be successful, you take out a lot of these linchpins that are going to require like a full rewrite, right? Because what we're saying in here is like, it's almost like, oh, just plan on your first thing being garbage.
Entirely trash.
And I don't like, to me, there's also like, even while saying this though, there's also nuance from the standpoint that maybe the data's right, but if I'm encountering end users that don't know what they want, like that iteration process could be a whole throwaway at the front end, right? Like
maybe
what we've built are really not the insights that like on that first presentation, they're like, what do you do? What is this? Like, what are you trying to do? Like, no, that doesn't make any sense, right? Like, oh, okay, well, let's shift gears. And now we're, going to simplify things, right? Or
sure.
Then you're throwing away pages and pages of work, right?
Well, that's where I would go with some of this is I don't think you want to build pages and pages. I think you want to build, enough that they can understand or grasp where you're going with things, but not so much that you're like, you're chunking 10 pages of work. If you get to the point where you have to chunk 10 pages of work, something was missed at the requirement side up front earlier on.
Oh my gosh, I think me and Seth are going to agree on something. So because we both gave a face to you at the same time, which will be really exciting.
No, I'm just thinking about how many other use cases I'm coming up with now that I'm like, where I'm like, my innate nature is like, of course not. Like we're like, you don't build things and throw them away. And as I'm talking about it more, I'm like, yeah, we threw that away. Yep,
Yeah.
threw that away.
Threw that away.
Started
Yeah.
that over.
Yeah.
Started that over. Right. Like,
yeah.
And it was a complete. It maybe wasn't. And so maybe I would say here, is it a 100% throwaway? Maybe not. But you're throwing away more than 50% of it, and refactoring a large portion of it.
Throwing away is yeah.
I would say I have thrown away more front end than I have had to refactor an entire model. Like I think is less of a thing I plan on redoing in
part of the plan,
with the exception of like the scenario I just outlined.
Yeah.
But if I think front end only, holy cow. Like, yeah, probably more than I would have liked, thrown away multiple versions of stuff. But that's also based on what you said with requirements. Like, who gave the first requirements? Were they right?
Did they even know what they're talking about? They may not have.
No, is that
no is the answer. Yes.
I think we need to explore, though. I think we're in a unique situation where there are two versions of throwing away. And I think we need to explore both. Maybe we don't do as good of a job on the first one with throwing away the tech side. We have like tech throw and user throw. Tech throw is our Power Query, our data modeling.
The backend throw.
The
backend stuff. Yeah.
Right. And that's, once we do that, then the report throw is still built on whatever our final version is. And I don't know if we do a good enough job of throwing that away, because I think a lot of times we do that self-exploration. Because especially if we don't know, like if I already know the fact tables and the dimensions, I don't need to throw anything away.
I'm going to throw a face on this one. Keep going.
Oh, okay. So let me argue this then. So
keep going.
And then you can poo-poo it. But
just maybe refining the idea a little bit.
That's fine. But when we're doing our self-exploration or that first discovery on the data model, we're usually putting some bloat in some tech debt that we don't need to, especially when we don't have the plan in our head or mapped out. And that in itself is something maybe we need to do a better job. Two things: to be a little more, not avant-garde, but to be a little more free to build it up and then refine it, because it's easy to do once we know what we want to do. And I think a lot of times we go into the model saying, I need to have this perfectly optimized, but I still don't know what I need to do. And I think
I think that's where I would disagree. So when I think about this plan to throw away, I'm also thinking about the lens of how many times have you done said dimension and insight gathering, right?
Okay.
For someone who's doing this for the first time, yeah, probably if you've only done a handful of full model builds from nothing, where people are just throwing tables at you and say, make a Power BI report, right? I think in the initial phases, you don't know what to ask initially about the requirements. Again, it goes back to requirements. And I think after a while, you start hearing repeatable patterns in what people are asking for. So I think in our space, with the years of experience that we've been doing Power BI, I honestly think we're getting to a point now where there's not too many use cases that we're hearing that we haven't already encountered. So we've already gone through the throwaway one or two versions of a model that could try to do, hey, I'm working in a financial report. Okay, well, I've already kind of done a couple of these, so I know the calculations are weird on the balance sheet, and we have to do some interesting things there. Okay, great. Well, I know how to solve that now because I've already thrown one away before, so I know how to design the second one. So in my opinion, like I'm taking like an abstract view of like project and modeling and saying, I know typically what I'm trying to build in the visual because I'm hearing people talk about it and I'm saying, oh, that's a bar chart and here's how we got to do it. Oh, that's a fact. You just talked about a fact right there. Oh, that's a dimension. So that would be a dimension table. Oh, you just talked about the different granularities. Well, that's two fact tables now because you can't have the same fact table with the same granularity. You gotta break that apart. So then in my mind, like as people are talking to me, I'm already forming my first version and able to kind of like get pretty close without throwing the whole thing away. So,
but I think what you're introducing into the conversation is experience.
Yes, correct.
Probably a big factor on planning to throw one away, because if you think about it, like where the first part of the conversation went is, hey, in scenarios where we're being tasked with building reporting around a data set and systems that we're not familiar with, We do that all the time.
Yeah.
The difference is if nobody can tell us anything about
True.
that system, there's
True.
business logic buried everywhere that you would
Yeah.
never know if
Exactly.
nobody would be able to guide you.
Yep.
Right. So what that does is it takes the years of experience and us being able to see things and hear other people talk about them and then translate that to core code on the back and raw data table. Like
Yeah, that's true.
It brings that realm of experience up, which is why I think that's the specific scenario I glom onto as still a challenge area. But if you don't have that experience, everything's a challenge area, even if it is described to you, I think.
Yes,
to some
correct.
degree,
But
right?
yeah,
So I think experience is something in here that is definitely part of the litmus of, do you plan to throw one away? Because if I'm that uncomfortable where nobody can tell me anything about the backend system and I'm just going to basically struggle through this with the end user, validating data and then talking through and then piecing things together, like that to me is a perfect scenario to like just plan on an iteration or a pilot, right? Like where you're saying,
Yep.
We're going to figure this out together. And at the end of it, I'll come up with something. But there's a major part here where I take all of this kind of hodgepodge, we're just throwing stuff against the glass, and then we're going to build the thing. And when I say the thing, what I think I want to introduce, because Tommy also said tech debt, is I just had this conversation today because somebody asked and they were like, oh, we were having a large meeting and I had mentioned one of the big wins that we had was a tech debt piece where we reduced the model size significantly. And the question was kind of framed in his interpretation of tech debt being, oh, you built something really sloppy. And that I think is different from the standpoint that what I think we're able to do with our experience is build something 80%. Like timelines are always a thing, right? So, or we have to build something in a certain time frame for the business in order for them to succeed at X, right? And I think what happens over time, where I don't necessarily agree that like I just plan on throwing something away, is I plan on making sure that whatever I'm building meets the needs of the business, and whatever that is. Does it need to scale? How many users are interacting with it? But whatever, the criteria change. But you absolutely, I think, can be successful without a complete throwaway in terms of meeting timelines and expectations and getting 80% of the way there. And your 20% is, this thing still runs. It hums. It does what the business expects it to do. But on the back end, did I do everything to make this the best highly performant model? Did I use surrogate keys? Did I reduce all of the, sizes of data? Did I structure things perfectly? The answer would be no, because if I did all those things, I wouldn't have met the business needs, right? And I think that's where like I push back a bit in some of these areas, especially around the data, that I don't plan on throwing something away, right?
Well, let me argue. I think there's two things to that.
I will let you argue. Yes.
That one,
but I don't agree
really
with it right off the bat.
agree with the tech data, and I think I want to hone on the skill side of things. What you said, the experience. So I wrote through a few math equations down here. So follow along. So,
all right.
Yeah.
One DAX, sprinkle in a little bit of tabular editor.
All right.
And out comes.
Yeah. It's probably better off, Seth. Keep it off for a little.
Good. Yeah, I totally agree with your mathematical equations.
Perfect.
Yep.
So
the art major says yes.
We're not done.
75% of anything new is the skill and the experience. I think the other 25% is the new systems or new logic. Like there's nothing, no matter what skill that you have, if you're going into a completely new system or new company or new org or just a new framework, if you have no clue what that is, there's going to be a tech debt that's assumed that you're going to have.
I disagree.
Even if you have no idea what the dimensions, the columns, what's primary, what's important.
It doesn't. No, yeah, absolutely. Because as long as dude, I mean, this to me is consulting. When you walk into an organization, you have absolutely no idea what their systems look like, what their needs are. They define those for you. So all of our talk about how you gather the appropriate requirements and get a good guidance of what you're going to build dovetails into what Mike was talking about, which was when people are talking, you automatically know that's a dimension. This is a fact.
Yes.
This is how, like, you're segmenting and building this thing. The key part here is people are leading you because they know their business. They know their systems. What they don't know is what you can produce for them.
Yeah. They don't know how to take that information and turn it into Power BI.
There's no 25% of like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what I'm doing when I walk into an area that like I don't know, because we've done this. And the more experience you have in different verticals, the more, like, if it's
financial versus
like, pick one, right?
marketing versus
like,
sales.
Once you have the experience, it's like one company isn't doing some rocket science that another one's not doing.
Sure.
Right.
That's a really good point, because that's one thing I've learned is, especially with consulting across multiple industries. So like financial sector or, fintech or energy sector. Like when I look across all these different business areas, the phrase "nothing is new under the sun" is really true. Like everyone thinks their business has these novel solutions and these novel problems, and like, oh, this is a problem. When I look at them holistically, no, you guys all struggle with the same stuff. You have problems getting data out into. Yeah,
there's 95% of what you're saying I do agree with, but I think every company does have.
I disagree with 10% of what you're saying, but go keep going.
Part that I disagree, I'm going to talk about. So,
okay.
No, I think the biggest thing is, of course, we understand when someone's saying dimension or table, but you're still, if you're going to a different system that may not be already structured, and I'm not saying the final version, like, what do I do? I'm not saying that. I'm saying that first iteration of what you do, I think we can be a little more freedom to experiment. That's what I'm trying to say.
But that's like
okay.
Experimentation. I don't think I've ever used that word in looking back at my experience in terms of consulting.
Well, again, I have a very low intelligence, so
I'm not saying that you're not playing around with like figuring things out, but like, to me, that following a process of requirements gathering, right? Like, like you're starting on the front end. The business has certain needs. They're telling you what sort of reporting that you need to build and whatnot. They point you towards the dude who owns the database, right? And it's like, okay, so here's what we're doing. Do you have existing reporting? Like, what are the columns? What are the tables? How does that, like, then you build your mind map, then you build your mapping of like raw to like how that maps out to like requirements that you're being told you need to have. And as you're going through things, I'm not building anything. I'm fact finding, getting the business logic and all the stuff. And that's your guide for then how you start to build out all the, transformations and shaping of your modeling in dimensions and facts. So like, if I'm doing all that pre-work, how can I get to a point in a model that I'm not at least 80% of the way there with the data I would need to produce?
Well, I think my argument is the technology part. And this is what I was trying to say is, with Power Query, we have a very unique opportunity where we really don't have to rebuild anything. I can do a lot of experimentation based on the scenario that I have and copy and paste and basically rebuild everything.
Well, maybe what you're saying, Tommy, is I'm going to take what you've said and I'm going to try and rephrase it in a way that makes sense to me. And maybe you can tell me if I'm on base or not. Right. So maybe I'm off track here. I think what you're saying is the source information, whether or not we know it or not, or we have an expert from their team giving us the source information, the Power Query, the transformation side of things. There's almost always a need to do some levels of data transforming to conform the data into the right shape for a visual or multiple visuals on multiple pages.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So I feel like I've experienced a lot of that. And so I would say I don't ever really use verbatim raw data from a source system. I'm finding more and more frequently now is every data system, and whether you do the transformations before Power BI in like a Databricks or a SQL engine that you can engineer the data with, or you do the data engineering in data flows or Power Query in a desktop file. I don't think it really matters where you do those things, but I would agree with you, Tommy, to that point. Like, there is a certain level of taking that raw data out of the source and shaping, conforming, and adjusting it, because I call it, when I talk about it in training things, I call it like a dance. We dance between
pad.
the model and then what you want the visuals to do. And so as you see more patterns, you can just straight up build what you want to build. But most often you're kind of doing a little bit of, there's probably some data shaping, and then you go build a couple visuals, and then you kind of like, that wasn't what I wanted. I need to shape the data a bit more. You go back to Power Query, you make some adjustments, you add some columns, do your things, and you come back over to Power BI, the visual side, and you build a bit more visuals. And then you can refine, okay, let's talk about the user experience of how the visual pages are going to be developed.
Right. And I think,
is that what you're speaking
to?
Is
That's exactly
that
what I'm saying. Yeah, because we have a unique technology with Power Query that can be kind of like a scratch pad. We're not building a table in SQL and then have to go back. I can do these quick transformations or try to get something right for a temporary situation, and at least go back. And if I need to copy and paste that, I can put that in another model. I can't tell you how many. Yeah.
But I'm saying, I don't think that, to me, I would not quantify that as plan to throw away. So to me, I just find, so I think I understand your use case.
Yeah.
I could see how you could apply that to plan to throw away, but I feel like if I was going to categorize that same use case that you're talking about, where you're kind of going back and forth a bit between the Power Query and the report side, I feel like that's just general building. I think that's
but at the same time here, like you think about when this book was written and then revised, we're still talking 20 years ago, right?
That's true.
At minimum. So there's
he didn't have Power BI.
What we're talking about, right. So if to Tommy's point, there's a lot of like or maybe where we're missing each other. There's a lot of fast, quick test analysis. Like I have to solve this hard problem. I'm going to shape this data. I'm going to do this Power Query. I'm going to throw it out there. It takes me 2 hours. Throw it away. Start over. Blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
In previous systems, man, that was a long
hours
time to try.
Yeah, that's true.
You really had to rebuild from the ground up.
Right. So in that case, like, okay, maybe we're saying the same thing, except nowadays we can iterate, right? That's just part of our thought process.
It happens in minutes versus like
the development process, right?
Yeah.
And that's the amazing part of the tooling that we have,
right?
And maybe it is that same thing that we're just glossing over and saying iteration.
No, now we're saying the same thing.
Okay, I'm with you, Tommy. Now
the crux of is it, rather than treating Power Query for the first time like, oh, I can't do anything wrong, it has to be optimized the first time. We are allowed to be a lot more liberal with that first iteration, and rather than going, I have to use, I name the sales report, so I have to use it.
Now I'm thinking about this differently, because if we've actually implemented, if you think about it, one of the things we've touted, or I do as well, is think about like our big complex systems, right? Mm-hmm. Like tons of data, and then all of a sudden somebody asks for that's disparate data everywhere. And one of the greatest things about Power BI is we can plug directly into those systems, mash it up in Power Query.
I see where you're going with this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? This is like one of the best things about Power BI. I can produce something for you, and I have one of these in the hopper right now that technically I am planning to throw away, right? Because what I'm like, I don't think of it in those terms. What I think about it is I'm delivering what the business wants, much faster than we would ever be able to do, because version 1 is somebody's pulling some data, specifically shaping an Excel file out of some systems. We're plugging into that. We're plugging into this system directly. We're plugging this, and then in Power Query, we're merging it together. We're shaping it, and we're building the front end. Does that mean so? That's version 1. We already know that if this hits prime time,
you're not pulling from
those
Excel.
back-end systems need to come from the source system. So now we have to, we know we're already planning.
Agreed.
We got to build pipeline. We're buying ourselves time to build the pipelines, build the framework, build all the stuff on the back end, and then just replace the back end underneath this report so that we have consistency. We have the trust. It's not like we can have some error off an Excel file, or we're only refreshing whenever that person manually runs through their process. So that makes a lot of sense that I am planning on doing that. But now I have a system that there's a reason I think that exists now more so than previously, which is I'm already producing the value, right? Maybe earlier. And maybe he's making that point here too, which means I just full circled into agreeing with him. Everything we do. Yep. Plan on throwing one away. Yep.
Exactly right.
If Fred Brooks had the idea of copy and paste for code, like this would be a drastically different book, and we have that ability. So, and this is all the tech side too. So
I do agree with his idea here around make mistakes quickly. Like, and I think one of the, when you were talking, Seth, what was clicking in my brain was the tooling that we have today allows us to go much, much faster. And again, in his example, he says, make your mistakes quickly learn from those mistakes and build what you want. And then it says also here, take shortcuts. And the other point that I think here was very relevant in his notes here, focus on the risky parts. Focus your time and effort, not on the things you know how to do, but focus on throwing away the things you have less knowledge or understanding around. And I think that's really smart there, because when you focus on things that are risky, you can then either mitigate that risk or identify how big the risk really is for when you build the final solution.
We have a technology that allows us to not load time, like where it's going to take double the time to do it, throw one away. I mean, we can take all of our experimentation and then copy and paste or replicate that incredibly quickly. Cost, another one, that it's not doing a first version, being a lot more liberal with what you're saying.
I think that's another good point here, Tommy, when you're bringing up around cost, right?
Yeah.
The cheaper things are, the more commodity they become. Point blank. Like, oh, this is the one I've been wanting to talk about. I think it's Jevons Paradox. I gotta Google it so I get
for the amount of times you brought it up on the podcast.
I brought this up before. Jevons Paradox.
17 times.
Yeah. Like 17 times.
Multiple times. Yeah.
Yeah. This is that use case. This is it. You're speaking exactly what I think it's Jevons Paradox, and then it's the idea of like the cheaper you make something, the less valuable it becomes, the more it is essentially going to be consumed. Right. So this is the same thing with like the proliferation. Oh my gosh, this is the same thing with proliferation of just the pyramid Matthew Roach's stuff, right? There's governed data at the top, and there's a whole bunch of crap data at the bottom of that pyramid. There's going to be a whole bunch of people building commodity level things that are just quick consumptions. Right. Millions of prototypes across your organization, Excel files, PDFs, Power BI files, just quick hits. I'm going to grab from here, doom, done. And did it work? Maybe not. But we just throw it away, move on, because it's so easy to produce another one of those that it's like a commodity at that point.
I don't know if you guys ever fell into this trap.
I just had light bulbs. Like, come on.
I fell into this trap where
I need to take a nap.
We'll end soon. No, we're gonna keep going. Have you guys fallen into this trap? Because I know I've named a report like quota sales, or the actual name of the report that's going to be published, and I'm so risk averse in that report to try anything, because this is the final report. Even though I could easily rename it, and like almost like that mental block of like, well, this is called the Northeast Sales Report, so I have to get everything right, even though it probably does require that like experimentation or what we're talking about. And
I don't feel like I feel like that way.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm with SharePoint at my side. I'm more than happy I'm more happy to just throw another copy of the file out there. I've gotten less worried about that as I've used that more. Yeah. Like I'll just edit it, be done with it, and just throw it in SharePoint and be like, okay, that's my next version. Yeah. And then I know it's there and I can go back. Oh, that was, I can kind of walk my way back through versions if I need to.
Yeah. But like, all these go ahead, Ken.
The more we talk about this, the more I think I just 100% agree across the board.
With me? Thank you.
No, with the author here, because in some cases we're talking about fast use cases. Yes. But how many systems have been built that haven't been fully refactored at some point because the business needs change?
Yeah.
Right. Like at some point in time, like, and he also introduces this idea of like one step forward, one step back, right? Where essentially even in robust systems that are built, they erode over time because certain things are introduced, or new features, or the next thing, and what people aren't like, you're deviating away from what the system was designed to do until finally you hit this point where somebody makes a request and you're like,
can't do it.
Yeah, we can't do that. And like I know that's true, right? Even in really big robust system, like you hit this thing where you're like, that's going to take us a month. Like we're going to have to refactor huge
A
parts
lot
of this
amount of
to make that work. And
Yes.
it's like, we really want to do that? You're like, yeah, okay. Then in some part of you're refactoring a large part of the system, right? So I think like I said, the more I think about this, I'm like, the more, maybe I'm all on board that, at some point in time, a business should plan that there's going to be a major refactor, or you're going to hit something that is going to be a priority where it may not be now, but eventually it will be.
And we have the technology that allows us to.
I don't know how you plan for that though. Like,
oh man,
at some point, 2 years down the road, this one's going to last us 2 years.
I do this all the time with Power Apps. We'll create a proof of concept pages, and everything devoted on there, I know I'm not going to use in the final version, like because it gets
makes
loaded
sense, though.
quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's jumping back into like the fast development. Of new things.
I'll also say, like, this occurs in Power BI files. I get given files all the time that have like 17 custom visuals in it. And I go, oh, look at all these custom visuals in here. I wonder if they're using them. And I click remove custom visuals and I scroll through, not used, not used, not used. Oh my gosh, look at these, not used, not used. None of them are used.
Right.
Oh, there's the one. We had like 5 custom visuals added and they only used one of them. And so they added all of them, but they never decided to remove them. So, I mean, and I've seen custom visuals take up anywhere between like 5 and 6 megabytes of just size in a Power BI file. So like just cleaning those things out.
The images.
Yeah. Or the code that runs it, or like there's code behind those different custom visuals. Some visuals are pretty beefy in size. So getting rid of them helps out a lot.
Well, I think we're naturally risk averse to make big changes. Like we just add up. And then it gets to the point like, well, I can't delete. This is the final version. And it gets a little harder.
I wish Power BI gave you a better way of knowing what you could delete. Like I feel like there's.
I know, I've tried all the external tools.
There's not a silver bullet yet. There's not one that says point to a model. I mean, there's stuff out there that does it on like a model by model basis, like a single thing, but like the comprehensive lens of what that looks like. And as soon as you open something up to be analyzed in Excel, anything you delete could be used in Excel, and you'll never know unless you look at the queries.
I just texted you, Mike. I had a model that someone gave me. It was like 300 measures, and it was only at 2 pages. Yeah.
Oh my land!
And it was a template, not
year to date -1.
Right, but
month to month. Sales month to month -3.
It's all for the sake of design, not necessarily. So you don't know like what's hidden behind what.
Yeah,
and it's true. What do you do with that? Do you just
we're never gonna get that unless a third party builds it.
And that's what this
100%.
Oh yeah.
Why?
What?
Why?
Because
of Jevons Paradox.
No, why would Microsoft give us a tool that would allow us to not purchase more licensing?
Oh, that's true. All models get larger in size. Yeah, we're never gonna let you clean it up. You can't clean it up.
No, you need it all.
That's good.
You need all the data.
Hey, have you ever seen the Dynamics templates? Have you ever seen the Dynamics 365 templates? Go download. Go to Microsoft first.
Like
try to download one.
The walkthrough of templates that
any of them
build something,
because you can't even use it.
No.
You already have an Azure blob. You have Dynamics set up. You need to set up Azure blobs before you can even use it.
Yeah.
These models that are from Microsoft probably have like 65 tables in them.
Oh my land.
Oh no. It's insane. It's insane. And I know someone just tried to iterate and make them better, but this is on the Microsoft site on learn.microsoft. So
wait, so somebody built a model that basically if you implemented your Dynamics environment exactly boilerplate, then it would work for you.
Yes, but it will still give you the 65 tables. And
but I'm saying like nobody just uses
boilerplates anything anymore.
They always custom build things.
And even then, just to get to that's what I already put a topic on our board for Dynamics in my struggles, but
how
another day.
You have accounts, you have opportunities.
Oh no,
there's 5 or 6 main tables, man.
Dynamics marketing is
done and done.
You wish. Yeah.
I'm not a fan of Dynamics integration.
No.
I've been there. I feel your pain.
Dynamics integration or Salesforce or NetSuite. Name your poison. Like none of them are easy to work with. There's so much data going on in there.
That's because technically, like the databases that are built behind the scenes there, or let's just call them the structure.
Yeah,
is built by folks just ramming
engineering.
stuff in.
It's built by devs.
Engineer.
There's no data engineering.
No, it's an automated way for like sales folks to just build stuff, right?
To get one
like
pie chart
behind the scene. Behind the scenes is when we'll just link this table and we'll just do this thing, and now we'll just grab this column from over here, and like behind the scenes it just becomes a spider web of
stuff.
Crazy. Yeah.
Well,
interesting.
I want to, if you so allow, I want to move forward to the throw one away, but talk about the canvas side, the user side of throwing one away. So unless we say that for another day,
I think what I mentioned earlier applies. If we're talking like, if I'm now on the camp of like, it's just a timing thing as far as data, in the structure of the model, right? As far as plan on throwing one away, I would say from a fast iteration standpoint, or right in the beginning, the front end, you throw 6 away. No, I'm just kidding. Like, it's not that bad, but like, I mean, there's depending on your end user and what types of requirements they're providing you, and your fact finding and building all this stuff, like you can go through 1 easily, 2.
I think
iterations of
So the real question here is,
I think back to the other point that Mike, that you made earlier, which is fail fast, quick. Yeah. Don't spend tons of time perfecting the page on everything that you build initially. You have to like
wasting
make it
time.
fast, make it iteration. Like if you're going to use Power BI as your whiteboard, right?
Yep.
Where or what other tool where you can mock up different layouts
Figma,
of the page, because
something from Adobe.
because somebody wants to see the interaction, filter action, whatever. Slap it in there, man.
Slap it in there.
This is where it's going to be like blah, blah, blah. Now I can spend another 4 hours perfecting the page after we've locked in what it's supposed to be doing.
Yep. Another thing I see, another challenge I see with people working through is you build a page, and instead of building a perfect page once and then copying it multiple times for the other parts of the report, I'll see people build all 4 pages, and then they'll go back and they'll iterate on the first page and get that page just really dialed in. Like all the images are where they need to be. All the buttons need to be where they are. Instead of focusing on that one page first, they build 4 pages, and then they have to now I got to go update all the other pages. No. Build all the other pages with just basic graphics on there, just the visuals, no styling. Build the one page that has all the styling, where you want to put the nav menu. If you have a header, if you're going to background image it, just do that. And then what you can do is you can just literally copy paste that one page, boom, 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 boom. And I'm loving this new the buttons, the navigation buttons. Yeah. Those are cool, man. If you want to flip through pages now, that simplifies that entire experience around navigating between report pages. And I use that all the time now. It's like, for multiple pages report, no problem. Boom, button, done.
Well, yeah.
And it's so much better.
This goes back to an article actually by Paul Turley. Years ago, I read that changed my life. And he
back in 1995.
Back in 1995, yeah. I think when Steph was writing for IBM. So, I think you guys were on the same team. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't know if you were his intern or the other way around.
Jeez. This is good. Zing.
But the idea was everything he did, and I do this with clients now, is the first phase is called the sandbox phase. And I tell clients, or I tell stakeholders, look, we are playing a sandbox. Do not worry about the colors. The titles are not right. We're looking at how the castle looks right now. Does the castle look right? Yeah. And we're going to build this together. And so we go through that. So I'm not, to your point, Mike, I mean, this is an experience point when you're focusing like, oh, do I have the title just right and the colors? And they go, I don't care about any of this. And what did you just do? Well, you wasted hours with trying to get the design right.
Yeah, no. And it's also, I think, I definitely think us also is like, it's good to also mute colors.
Yeah.
Like stuff I've been doing recently is I have no background. I have no buttons. I just literally put visuals on the page, and I've tried a technique that I think may work. I might have to see if I'll do it again. I make a theme file that has nothing but grays for the bars. So I make a theme file with nothing but gray, just shades of gray. And then what I do is I build visuals on that page. So that way nothing has color. It's very muted. and we talk. We remove color from the context of the conversation and talk more about the visuals, where they're placed, what the interactions look like. So I've done that once. It seemed to work out pretty well. I may try it again.
That's such a good idea. I can't tell how many times I've been in a call. They're like, I don't like that red.
Blue. Yes.
Yeah.
You're like, it doesn't matter.
You know
what
stands out is that color.
The blue doesn't matter right now. We're not focusing on the blue. It's like, yeah, but that's going to be changed. Yes. Okay.
That's not company colors.
That is funny. That's
not company colors.
That's a really good idea though, because that's the first thing that a lot of people are offended.
Oh man, they hang on the colors, man.
Right away. Yeah.
Why is still blue here and green there?
Yeah. No. That first pass makes sense. Again, it's very simple, but then you don't have to do any worry about colors. You just talk about what does this visual show and why is it here? That's what we're here to talk about.
Yeah.
You kind of remove distractions initially until they're ready, and then you can incorporate the colors and stuff.
But that means you're going to be throwing that away to an extent.
It is.
I don't know any agree or disagree with the following. Do you think
I disagree.
Cool. So we'll move on. Easy. Done. Knew that was coming. Should have known that was coming. I don't like that blue, by the way.
You lobbed that one up there.
I did love that one.
That was a slow roller, man, right there.
Run. By the way, another 9 years. So, should every report that you design should be planned to be thrown away with the intent to throw away that first page? The first time
I think we already do that. I think you do.
I think you're right.
We may, but do you think for people listening, that should be part of every?
They do it without knowing it, but they do. If they actively acknowledge it, they probably don't. But I'm sure they throw away a lot of that first work that they've done.
Sounds like an agreement, so we'll take it. So
I agree.
Okay, cool.
All right. I don't want to cut off the conversation. I think this has been a really good one. I like what we're talking about here about all the things we want to call like the initial project, a proof of concept. This is an MVP. We're gonna do a pilot. This is a sandbox. I like the new term now that I'm hearing is micro project, right? A little mini project before the real project. So all those terms kind of describe what we're talking about today. I think this has been good. Plan to throw away some of the work. Build fast, iterate quickly to get to the final result as fast as you can. I think that's the mantra of what we do here. Act like the business, move fast, iterate quick, add value, and then think like IT. Build with sustainability, build so you can repeat it. So I think that really fits our moniker of like what we stand for and what we do. So with that, we just want to say we really appreciate your listenership. I hope you got a couple good laughs out of this one. I hope this was a fun one for you to listen to. If you enjoyed the content here, please share it with somebody else. We really appreciate the share on the podcast, anything that we're doing here. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
You can find it anywhere it's available. If you want to listen audio only, you can listen on Google, Apple, Spotify, anywhere a podcast is available. Subscribe and hit the rating on Spotify and Apple. If you want to join live, you can do so on YouTube and LinkedIn.
I think there's a trend going on the internet right now around everyone using the OpenAI chat feature. And we should write some poems about Power BI, and we should, at the end of our podcast, we should write a little poem and read a couple lines of our poem that the AI has built around Power BI. I think that's, maybe we'll have to add that in a future episode. So anyways, I keep thinking of like Power BI, oh, how I love thee. Your data is so intriguing to me. That's Tommy ripped me off one today. Off the cuff, man. I'm fired up. Anyways.
I tried saying write a poem about pasta and it said try again.
Plan to throw one away. Oh, go play with Power BI.
Ooh, got it.
I love it. Okay. All right, excellent. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time.